Okay, so I saw one person move one chair in order to make the room more comfortable and more helpful. And I know that especially as adults, we feel a little bit hesitant, to move things around because after all, it's not my space. And we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. So if you were to arrange this room so it was more comfortable and more helpful and more conducive to our learning environment, what would you do?
Yeah, I might put the chairs.
Put them around the table, okay?
See, but then we have to. Well, if I was just doing it
Cameras.
for myself.
Yeah, just for this class, right?
I also think it depends on, like, for adults, I feel like this works. If it's kids, well, and also if you gave us a handout, I definitely agree with the table.
Right.
Which you have stuff to take notes. So it makes more sense. But for kids, yeah.
So it's interesting where you chose to sit. And I know you've got a little one, and that may have something to do with where you chose to sit. Where would you normally sit if you were by yourself and choosing a spot in a class?
I chose where I can see you.
Okay.
Because there's a gap. Usually we're late, so we get the front.
So you got it back while you could.
But it depends on. At church we said almost, well, this sits right in front of us in the very front row. That nobody, church etiquette, you don't say.
Unless you're responding. See, that's why you don't sit in the front row. 'Cause
Right, we will never know if she responds.
that's it.
She responds every week.
Well, it was interesting because I did a workshop one time and it was about adult learners. And we were specifically talking about styles of adult learners and how different adults learn. And I had this exercise where as they came in for the second session, I asked them to rearrange the chairs the way that they would want to arrange them. But I told them we had done a test at the beginning of it and said to find their learning style. And there's 4 of them. And then I said, now when you come back, find the group that you have the same learning style and then rearrange that part of the room for your group. And it was very interesting because there was one group of folks that they didn't rearrange a thing. They just came down and they sat on the front row just like that in the row. And then there was a second group that came in and they sat on kind of the second and third rows. And they kind of did more of a semicircle kind of thing. Then there was a third group that kind of moved a little bit further back and they kind of moved their chairs where they could see each other a little bit more. And then the last group went to as far back as they possibly could. They took their chairs, put them in a circle so that they could see each other and they didn't even care about whether they could see me or not. And the funny thing about that was I did not expect that. But it was a visual representation of what each one of those groups are like and what they prefer. So what's funny is that what we found was each group would prefer it a different way. And so if you were to try to arrange a room to be comfortable for everyone, you might find it very difficult to do.
Especially if it's small.
Especially if it's small. So if you've got a small room where you don't just have a lot of room to rearrange very much. So what does that look like for us and what does it have to do with what we're talking about today? Well, we started out talking about some of the whys of classroom behavior and misbehavior. And now where do you start? If you want to really kind of have a good experience with your kids, where do you start? And I decided we're going to start with the simplest and most available tool that all of us have. It's the one that we really ought to start with. In fact, if we don't get this one, anything else that we do isn't going to work. And so more than any other classroom technique, classroom availability as a teacher, above every other tool that you've got in order to maintain classroom behavior, let me just ask, what do you think it would be? That's a pretty high thing. And they say, what are you thinking? I said, what is the teacher thinking? What do you think it would be? Your number one tool to maintain good classroom behavior.
Relationship.
That is the place where you got to start. Developing good, positive relationships with the kids. Let me tell you, I've done a lot of classes up here at Greenlawn and some workshops and some other places on what's called love and logic parenting. Many of you are familiar with love and logic parenting. Jim Fay and Foster Klein are the two men who developed this parenting philosophy. There are several techniques to it, but the thing about it is there's nothing new about it. It's just some new words that they put onto it. But they tell the story because they go into schools and they help teachers with discipline and behavior management techniques based on their philosophy of love and logic. And they talked about this one school, and I think it was, if it wasn't an inner city school, it was a school very much like that. I mean, it was a rough school. And they were noticing that in that school, most of the classrooms had lots and lots of different issues with behavior. And the teachers were pulling out their hair about how do you deal with this stuff. But they got to looking at one class. And that one class was taught by this little old lady who was about 65, 70 years old. She was about 4'5", and she had some big boys. I mean, this was a high school setting. She had some big boys in her class. But they noticed that she had that class in the palm of her hand. They did anything she asked them to do. They'd go to the other classes and they would throw things. They would talk all the way through class. They'd turn backwards in their chairs. It was, they'd do all sorts of stuff in order to disrupt those classes. But when they got to her class, they sat there, they listened to her. It was a model classroom. And they got to looking to see what in the world is she doing? And what they found out was she had developed a relationship with them first. And because she had developed that positive relationship with them, they would do anything that she asked them to do. She was kind of like their grandma in that class. So what does that look like to develop a positive relationship with the kids? The reason this is the place to start is because it's about trust. Kids have got to know that you care about them, both in the classroom and out of the classroom. And that's pretty key, because it's one thing to be in the classroom and say, yeah, you got to love me, you got to care about me here. But what about outside? Do you care about my life? Do you care about my things? Do you care about who I am for me? Or is it just because you're trying to teach me something in this classroom? And so it is this interesting balance that has to take place in order to develop healthy relationships. And it's the balance between being strict and being caring. Now, if you were to determine for yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being strict, 5 being caring, where would you be on that continuum? Do you tend to be more strict? Do you tend to be more caring when it comes with kids? What do you think?
More caring.
More caring?
Mm-hmm. 4.
A 4? You too? What about y'all?
My natural reaction is strict. And it depends on how tired I am and how I feel on if I need more stuff.
Right?
Or if I could stay level-headed.
Yeah.
And observing her, I'm saying that's a false choice. Because she is both.
Yeah. And that's just it. All of us can be both. All of us can learn to be both, but most of us have something we fall back on. When you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're kind of in a hurry, then there is one that we tend to fall back on. Are you more strict? Or are you more caring? And what you might also find is you're one way with your kids and your family, and you're one way with the classroom somewhere as well. What happens though if you're in a classroom situation and you err on the side of being too caring? What kind of a class does that look like?
Somebody doesn't get cared about in that situation. I just noticed when I'm trying to really minister to a kid, I guess you would say, then all of these other kids are around here going crazy, not getting cared. So if it's too caring on this way, everything else is off balance.
A little ironic that way, isn't it? Yeah.
Also, it sometimes enables the poor behavior.
Yeah.
Which causes them not to grow. And then they get older and have more consequences. And that it's hard to teach a dog, an old dog new tricks. I would say it's the same with behaviors. The older they get, without educating on how to act, the harder. And the more it carries over to other behaviors. But it's so hard whenever
It's hard
you
to
don't have,
put that with a bud because
we have them an hour a week, or even hours we get on late in the game.
So what if you're too strict?
No relationship. There's no point. Can't do anything.
you're permissive, you let the kid run the show.
Mhm.
There's at some point at which you as a teacher need to be the leader.
But if you're too strict, those who especially who are the strong-willed, those control
They'll
seekers,
just get that mark.
yeah, because that's the diet that they live on. It's that interesting balance that we got to learn. Some of us, yeah, we kind of do tend to be more caring. I mean, that's why we deal with kids. We want to love on them. We want to be kind to them. We don't want to be the mean person. But see, when it comes to a Bible class, sometimes you got to play both roles. You got to be good cop and bad cop. That's one thing. If you got a helper in there, you want to do the other. But somehow you got to do bad cop, good cop. Now, one of the things they found out about this, I was telling you about this 65, 70-year-old teacher, she had learned the balance. Because she was a pretty good cop most of the time. But if one of them got out of line, she could snap them back faster than anybody else could. She had learned that balance between being caring and strict. So let me ask, then, as you're developing this positive relationship, the place to start developing that relationship, what are some of the things that you do with kids in the classroom that helps get that good positive relationship started? That is the place to start, isn't it? And that is the hardest thing for me to do, to know a person's name. I have worked on it all day long, so I can sit here and go, Leah, that's right, Leah and Becky. I said the rest of you, I kind of know you. So Peter, I hadn't met Peter and talked to him specifically and learned his name yet. And so being able to call that person by name. I had heard this one, I had gone down here to Tech for a workshop one time. And there was a statement that he made that has stuck with me ever since. It says, it is really sad, I may not get this correct now because I didn't prepare to say it. It is really sad for a person to go through life and never be noticed. They would never know if they even existed. Whenever I was in first grade, the teacher made little folders for us so we could put our stuff in it whenever we were finished with it. And so at the end of the quarter, we had this folder with the stuff that we had learned that quarter. And she put each of our names at the top of it. Well, when I got my folder, she had put my name at the top, Dewie. Now, that's not how I spell my name. I put an EY at the end of my name. Now, I wasn't particularly crushed over it because she and I already had a relationship. But knowing that person's name, she went over and she crossed out the IE and she put EY whenever she realized the mistake she had made. So she made sure that I knew that she knew my name. Knowing that name is important. Got to remember the name.
It's also a control technique. You don't know their names. But if you know their name, that's power.
If you don't know my name, I can get away with anything because you won't know how to find me afterwards. That's right. In Jesus' day, they had the demons. There was this thought that if demons knew a person's name, then they could control that person. And that's why you see in like the story of Jesus going to the graveyard where the demon-possessed man is, that has the legions. Go back and read it, because many times what the demons will do, in that case, they said, Jesus of Nazareth, what do you want with us? And one of the explanations behind some of that is they had never met Jesus before, but they knew his name. And if they called out his name, they knew they had control. And Jesus, of course, bucked that right there on the spot. Names are so important. I know your name. And if you're like me, that I remember faces, but please don't ask me to remember your name. And you two got your sweaters on or covering up your name tag. You're really testing me today. I know. That's good. And that's because I've got this group instead of, spread out this whole way. There's just been no way. There's a guy whenever I was at Abilene Christian, he taught, some of you may know John Willis. He passed away just a couple of months ago. But when we were there, he would have classes that would have 125, 150 people in them. And he would stand at the door. Here's another technique. You stand there and greet folks coming in. You stand at the door and he would greet each person and learn their name the first week of class. He would remember every student's name for the rest of the semester. Then I would go back to the campus and see him 20, 25 years later. He still had my name. You think we had a relationship? Now, he didn't know much about me, but I felt a connection with him. I didn't know much about him, but we had a connection because he knew my name.
I just think getting to know that, I know that one of my, he loves singing, he leads or singing. And knowing that that's his thing, I think helps him also.
Yeah.
My whole kitty kid, which I think is my kids' little piece. Everything's pink.
Yep.
I have another kid that everything's purple. And knowing those things so that before they say, and knowing who wants to read, who does not want to speak at all.
So one of these first places to start is you've got to focus on people before anything else. We get focused on lesson preparation. We get focused on activities. We get focused on games. We get focused on crafts. We get focused on a lot of things. The first thing to focus on, though, is focus on the people. And so that means as they come in, be sure and have a smile. And I know some Sunday mornings, some Wednesday nights, it is really hard to paste that smile on. It has been, you had to stay up the night before, and then you had to drive in, and I've got a smile on today, but you have that smile on with the kids. You greet. Now with kids, it's very fun because a lot of them are only this tall. So how do you greet a child and develop that close relationship? Well, a good way to do it is not this way. What happens if you greet a child this way? And that's what they're focused on.
Right.
It's very much an authoritarian kind of a posture, down like this. You might as well put your finger up like this and do like that. No, instead, now some of us can't get down and up as well as we used to, and so trying to get down on their level, and I'm not going to do it right now because I'm one of those that have a hard time getting up, but you can turn this way with them. If you turn to the side to get eye contact. Now, if you're dealing with teenagers or really big fifth graders, you may have to go like this and get you a step stool so you can kind of get up on their level. But yeah, you develop that eye contact. Sometimes we get so busy looking at what we're trying to teach that we don't have that eye contact, and you don't really care about me. If you're in a classroom, and I know that most of us teaching kids, we don't do this. Y'all mentioned the podium, though, that has the cup holder. A really important thing is if you've got a podium and you're teaching with the podium, don't stand behind the podium. Especially with the older kids. Sometimes older kids classes will have that podium in there for teaching. What's wrong with the podium? It does. It's got this barrier.
It also takes away your power.
Right. You got to get rid of the barriers. Get out from behind the barrier.
So maybe turn the podium to the side. I sometimes, right now it's for projector, but sometimes I use it for my crafts to pull it up.
When I use a podium, instead of standing back behind it like this and doing this way, I most often will have it over to the side like this. That way, if I've got notes, if I've got materials, if I've got something I want to reach for, it's there, I can use it, but it's not between me and the learners. And that develops that close relationship with them. That eye contact, friendly touch. Our world has gotten so crazy about touch. And I know of some churches that have gotten to the point with their child safety guidelines and policies where they say, don't touch the kids. I gotta tell you, I am not in that camp.
They touch you.
I try not to, I try to, remember that, but the kids, especially the ones that are coming from really bad homes, they just grab you and hug you, and you're my favorite person, and I just love you, and you're kind of like, this is awkward, but it's what they need, and, you can't, that'd be the worst thing is to push it away.
Well, it is what they need.
I'm gonna say you have to watch the kid,
You do.
which, I mean,
If you
I'm
go
from a
up
different
and they
environment.
step back, you don't force it.
Yeah.
But coming up, just a pat on the back, maybe just a touch on the shoulder.
definitely start there, and then if they initiate a hug, I'm hugging them. And
Yeah,
plus,
they initiate.
there's some that's,
Like
I'm also with a
officers,
different
you
group.
can't touch them.
I'd be
Yeah.
definitely careful on how I hug. But,
Right. But you don't even start with
but
the
if
hug.
someone- Yeah,
Start up with the fist bump.
My kids love it.
And there'll be kids that you'll want to fist bump and they'll step back. That's okay. Now, one of my favorite things, and Andrea knows this because I do it with Archer all the time, is I come up to shake their hand, and if they give me my hand, I give them a good shake. And if you give them a good shake like that, and they say, "Oh yeah, you're fun to be with," make it you though. Make it you. But you're right. Watch
some
the
of
kid.
kids that don't like it, some of them do like the virtual touch,
Hmm.
where you, fist bump without touching. Mimic touch in the air towards each other, but you don't actually touch. Now, most of those kids are going to later start the fist bump and possibly even all the way to hug, but they need to have that relationship first.
But you let them indicate what they're comfortable with. What it communicates though is, I care about you. Encouragement, giving encouragement, and that's inside and outside of class. Whether it be verbal encouragement where you say it, or you write it and send them something, they love that encouragement. And one of the things I told you, the guy said, it's sad for a child to go through life and never be noticed. Then here's a statement that you can use with a child. You can say, I noticed that you, and then notice something. I noticed your pink blouse today. It's really pretty. I just want you to know I noticed that. Ooh, wow. I noticed today that y'all are wearing the same shirt. That is
Go sunset.
That is hilarious. I just want you to know I noticed that. And so it's just a brief statement of, this is what I noticed about you. Because so many kids don't feel like they're seen. A lot of folks, they get the idea that you're to be seen and not heard. Well, sometimes if I'm not heard, then I'm not even seen. And if I'm not seen, I can get away with a lot of stuff. I just want to I noticed this about you today. I noticed that you really listened well today during the Bible class lesson. I just want you to know I noticed that. I noticed the picture that you drew today. It was so colorful. It was so, you spent a lot of time with that. I just thought you'd like to know I noticed that. Just watch your feet for a while. Develop those close relationships. So focus on the people. You mentioned getting to know what they like. Getting to know what they're about. So if they like the color purple, you'll know that these, do something with purple with this individual. Angela had a class where she said it's really challenging because each class of kids that you get as they come through, there'll be a different set of things that they like. And so you got to have to tailor some things depending on that group. There was one particularly difficult child she found out that liked trains. So to connect with that child, she would give illustrations or examples using trains. Thomas the train engine was a great help for her in that particular class because he loved trains, and there are character lessons that Thomas the train engine can teach. So he used trains. If they love stuffed animals, use stuffed animals. If they love Play-Doh, use Play-Doh. If they love whatever it is, learn the child, learn what turns them on, be aware of the things that they enjoy, and then use those things in the lesson because that develops that close relationship with them.
I'll say also avoid things that you know that they don't like. Or make accommodations.
Sure.
I have a kid who does not like cutting things out, so
Yep.
someone else cuts those.
You learn pretty quickly what a class likes and what they don't like. Some classes love story time. They will do anything to hear a story. Some classes you say story and they go, oh. And so that means this class isn't going to do good with story times. You got to be adaptable. Learn what turns them on, learn what turns them off, and develop that relationship with them. Number 2 is on learning the people you're with is not going to be very popular. And I wish if any of you in here has the clue for this one, let me know what it is. Be early. We destroy our own learning environments and invite bad behavior by being the last ones there. It just is.
I'm trying to adopt, I came and borrowed from lots of different people, but that phrase, and see if I can get this right, early is on time and on time is late. And I'm trying to adapt that for myself, because if I don't do it, everyone else isn't gonna do it, but for all the teachers trying to, gonna try to start having that phrase be there to that exact reason.
Yeah.
I have a dilemma. I have kids that have to go to Bible class.
Yep.
And I need to be in my Bible class.
Yep.
We need to find. a
And
solution
so
to that.
that's been very hard. So I'll go and then after run the kids to class, because I can't drop them off without anyone.
Right.
And so, and I don't think I'm the only one.
No,
No.
they're not.
I think it's probably church universal.
Because many of the teachers are the ones that had kids that age.
And also picking them up, I always feel so bad because
Yeah.
sometimes the teachers are walking them down because all their kids are picked up.
It is
Gotta get
it is a
everyone out of
real
my
struggle.
class.
If you are the last one in there, what you actually do is go into a classroom where the kids own it. And now you're the visitor. If you're the first one in the room, they're coming into your domain. This is your place. And it will affect behavior, if it's theirs or if it's ours. The other thing about being early is it does give you that opportunity to be able just to visit, be able to talk. But that also means that if you're going to be there early and you have these kids coming in early, then you come up with some good pre-class things, like come in and rearrange the chairs, so that there's something purposeful for them to do even as they first coming in. And some of you who missed out on the Play-Doh, see, then you also, oh man, I'm gonna be there on time next time because we missed out on the Play-Doh. Some of those kinds of things to help get to know the kids, kind of invite them into your space. Be prepared. I know that one's not popular either.
Oh, I don't know. You always gotta be prepared for your, being unprepared is like shoot yourself in the head.
Oh, yeah.
You know the teachers, they come in, they got to rush to the resource room first because they got to pick up a bunch of stuff at the last minute. And then they come into class and there's already a room full of kids and they come and plop the stuff down and then they've got to spend time trying to get it sorted, trying to get it here and there and there. And they don't get to focus on the people. They're focused on their stuff. Be prepared. That's what I'm saying. It's some simple things, the easiest things for us to do, and they're the things that we miss. Be ready, be prepared, be calm, cheerful, and firm. That's that balance between being firm and being caring. Because that you need to know that they need to know that you're glad that you're there, even if you're not. I am glad I am here, and I'm going to be glad for the next 45 minutes. But the kids need to know that, and then focus on their strengths, like we said. Find out not only what the kids like, but find out their personalities. Some kids love to be leaders. Pick those to lead. Especially the control freak, the one that wants to be in charge, the one that is the strong-willed. See, our reaction sometimes is to step back from that and say, you sit over there and you be quiet because I'm the one in charge. Why not emphasize their strengths? This one loves to be in charge. Use that person as a leader. Utilize them to help hand out things. Utilize them to help do things in the class. Find things that will match that person's personality. If it's a quiet person, but you can tell that they really care about people, they care about people's feelings, find ways that they can show that compassion to other kids in the class. Utilize those strengths. Help teach them what it looks like to have those relationships with others.
Chores that the kids have designated themselves. I have one who will go pick up the Bibles. She
It's about kind of like the participation. But because of her. But as soon as I start moving to craft, she gets up and gets Julie, gets all the Bibles and puts them up. It's just her thing.
It's her thing, yeah. Let her have it.
Yeah. I will say that's something that I will struggle with at times, especially whenever they're like, I am doing this. I go into that asking or telling type of mentality, and I have to go back at times and be like, it's okay.
And that's where it's okay that if you're working from a lesson plan, be sure and write in there her name and what she's going to do. If you need reminders around the room, sticky notes are great. This is the person going to do that. That's the person's going to do that. Focus on the people, first place to start. Second thing is focus on the environment. Now this one is kind of difficult, especially if you've got the small room, if you've got something like that, it doesn't allow itself for a whole lot of variety. But just some ideas on this. Number one, making sure that it's neat and orderly. Angela student taught whenever she was in school. She student taught with a lady that was a wonderful kindergarten teacher, but her classroom was chaotic. She had stuff in every open space on the wall. It was completely filled with stuff. And especially for those kids that have sensory issues, that will drive them bananas and they will act out because of it. It needs to be neat, it needs to be orderly, it needs to look like somebody cares enough to keep this place cleaned up and picked up. Parents need that. Parents need to know that we care enough that we provide that safe and clean environment for folks. So that neat and orderliness is so important. Provide boundaries for activities. Those obvious boundaries. Now, if you've got enough room, what that means is with small enough kids, we know that the tables are where we do certain activities. We may have a mat or a rug where we do other activities. And different behavior is expected in different activities, aren't they? And so you develop those zones if you've got room in a room to do so, where this kind of behavior is okay here, this behavior is okay over there. So for example, if you're over on the mat and you are listening to a story, what kind of behavior do you expect?
Stop.
Okay, keep your hands to yourself.
They're talking like it must to the story.
It's participating and engaged, okay?
It will be thrown all over.
So question, is it important when you're at the mat that every child sit down applesauce crisscross? Crisscross applesauce, how do you say that? Crisscross applesauce. Is that important?
Yeah, try.
You can try.
But those kids that need to move a lot more.
That's right.
But it is important to put them towards the back so it doesn't distract the ones that can't.
It's okay that the rule becomes, as long as you're not causing a problem for anything else on the planet, it's okay to stand sometimes. It's okay if you want to sit. As long as you're not causing a problem for anyone else on the planet, is it okay to lay down? See, we get all concerned about stuff that we cannot control. And the child's going to show us, oh yeah, I'll show you. So stop sweating the little stuff and focus on the big stuff. One of the things I learned, class spaces, class arrangements, kids do not do well in rows. They don't do particularly well. That's why you can't reach. Yeah. And it depends on the group of kids. Do they do better in circles? Do they do better at tables? Do they do better? Where do they do better? And focus on that environment so that you're not working against yourself in trying to manage behavior. Be sure that there's age-appropriate things in the room. I mean, if you're trying to, and I know some of this is outside of your control. This is where you may have to go back and you may have to have a heart-to-heart with the individual. Sorry, Leah. Where you have this conversation. I know Leah probably she feels like she's hitting herself up against the wall sometimes with some of us kind of folks. Chairs like this are not going to work with 3-year-olds. Just they don't work. Tables like this aren't going to work very well for, cradle roll. Now, I'm being a little bit facetious there, but you understand. It's things that are age appropriate, things that they can handle. And then take advantage of the power of music. If you got an activity going on, say over at the tables, there's a different behavior that you expect over there, isn't there? There can be some talking with friends. There can be some cooperative things that are going on, or the child that I want to do it all by myself. But then play some music, because that will kind of help calm the atmosphere. And the rule is this: I'm happy for you to talk with one another and visit with one another as long as you're softer than the music is. When I can't hear the music anymore, then we're going to have to do something else. Music has a wonderful way of calming, especially the energetic ones. I would choose either. Well, again, it's age appropriate. You have to know the group. And so typically in ours, it's going to be some kind of an a cappella children's music of some kind. But the older kids, it could be something like the group a cappella, or what's the a cappella praise and harmony folks, or Zoe group, or just anybody that you can find that would be helpful in those situations. But that will depend on the people, the kids that you got, what works for them. So focus on the people, focus on the environment, and then focus on the program. Did you know some of us pride ourselves in being unpredictable and a little surprising? How well does that work in a Bible class, do you think? You need to have a routine. Kids need to know what to expect. Now, that's okay if you've got little elements in the class. For example, one of the things that I know a lot of classes do is they'll have a treasure box, or they'll have a Bible story box, or something like that. Let's see what's in there today. Just, what's the story about? Or I've got this lesson, and we pull out little surprises from time to time. But when it comes to the class as a whole, the kids need to have a pretty good idea what comes next, what's going on. And I'll share a tool later on to help with some of that predictability. But kids, especially in our society, where you can't depend on just a whole lot of things, they are hungry for that routine and for that predictability. And so they're looking for that in a Bible class. I forget how many years ago it was, but y'all remember when, McDonald's really shot themselves in the foot one year, because McDonald's decided they were going to add a whole lot of menu items to their repertoire. As soon as they did, their customers dropped off and people started complaining. Because what they said was, I want to be able to come in and I know what I want, and I'm going to pick that because that's all you've got and that's what I want. I'm afraid Chick-fil-A is about to shoot themselves in the foot, because they keep talking about expanding their menu to include lots of other items. I go to Chick-fil-A to have a chicken sandwich or chicken nuggets. I don't need a
Chicken strips sometimes.
chicken strip sometimes.
But yeah, sometimes I'll be going, well, I can get a chicken leg at Popeyes, I'm going next.
Yeah, it's the one thing. That's what you do.
What's the best to facilitate switching teachers and routine?
I'm glad you brought that up, because first of all, when we talk about focusing on people, how difficult is it to really get to know learners if your rotation of teachers is every month, every week, every Sunday? You can't develop those relationships. And just about the time you get to know them, well, now somebody else has to start getting to know them. So how do you facilitate that? I'm not sure there's a really good way, except try for, now you also don't want people feeling like that once I'm in here, I can never get out. I'm going to be imprisoned here for the rest of my life. So you gotta balance that. Huh?
Yeah, but let's be honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got to balance some of that.
It's true.
The best ways that I've seen is sometimes, if you can, have the new teacher come in the week before and be a part of that class session, so the kids can see that person and at least develop that relationship early. Another thing that I've seen some places is before the quarter starts, they'll actually send a letter home with a picture of the teacher. And that way they can see who their teacher is going to be. today's day and age, an even better solution would be to send something home through an email or through some other means where you can actually video message from the teacher where the video says, I'm looking forward to having you in class. This is what we're going to be doing. And I'll see you there on Sunday, where they can get that personal contact in some way.
That's cool.
So this year, since this was my first year, and I scheduled an introductory class. So you didn't really have a Bible lesson for the day. It was all about getting to know the teacher, getting to know the students, and the students getting to know the teacher, and it really it seemed to make everyone be a little bit more comfortable that they didn't just have to hit the ground running with a great Bible lesson. They just had some space to get to know the kids.
Wonderful idea.
I like the going in with the other teacher,
I like that
the
too.
kind of pass the baton,
Yeah.
and the kids see that this is a trusted adult.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
my environment.
especially especially the younger and the special friends.
Yeah. So have time cues when the story is over, then we will. It's part of that routine, part of that looking for, it was funny, some of that routine. I remember I was teaching, I think it was a smaller, like a 3 or 4-year-old class. And we always would start with a certain group of songs. And it just so happened on that particular day, I missed a song. I did this instead and went to the third song instead of doing the one we usually did second. And they said, no, that's not the right song. Got to do this. Allow enough time for transitions. It takes time for kids to change gears sometimes. And so if you're going from story time to an activity time, or especially the other direction, doing things that kind of have time for those transitions.
I do have some struggles because my group, the time needed is so different for each
Sure.
person. How do you?
On the one hand, what that may mean is stop trying to do so much. Focus on 2 or 3 really good activities instead of thinking I've got to do 4 or 5.
But the kid
The kid that's finished one is sitting there going, okay, now what?
And so the next one is make sure you have plenty of options available. So you've got the group options where we're all doing this at the same time together. But if you get finished early, feel free to go over and sit on the mat and take a book and read it. Or feel free to go over here and come up with an individual activity that can be done while the others are finishing up their things. So yeah, it takes some planning that way where, okay, I'm going to have fewer activities for the group, but I'm going to have plenty of options, plenty of opportunities for those that get finished early. And they've got something that they're being able to do that's purposeful and keeping them engaged. Good question. Yeah. And then evaluate your effectiveness. After each, one, ask yourself, what worked today? What didn't work today? What should I do differently? Instead, if you're like me, what I oftentimes do is I'll beat myself up. Well, that didn't go very well. I'll never get this down. No, remember, each group of kids is different. Each week is different. You may get the same kids, their faces this week and next week, but you really have a different group of kids this week and next week. And so I may have to evaluate effectiveness. What worked? What words worked with them? You're talking about those trigger things that sometimes set somebody off. What do I need to stay away from? Or what really seemed to connect with them? I need to do more of that. And so work on that effectiveness. See, the thing about behavior that we talked about last time is behavior is learned. Behavior is something that doesn't come with birth. You learn it over time with your interactions with other people. What that means is new behaviors can also be learned through their interactions with people. That means for me as a teacher, if it didn't work very well for me this week, I could learn a different behavior. Don't give up on yourself. It also means that these kids that are driving me crazy can learn different behaviors. Given the time with focusing on the people, focusing on the environment, and focusing on the program, and trying to do it in a way that will help them learn new patterns and new habits. But it takes time. It takes that relationship to make that happen.
not our job to fix them, at least in the Bible class. It's a little bit different for, you only have them for an hour a week or 2 hours a week. You can't do as much as like a school teacher can do.
Right.
So our job is more to manage. You can't always necessarily fix the kid.
No.
But we can fix it while they're in our class.
And you develop that relationship with them so that you can have interaction with them outside of class and have little opportunities to have input with them. See, that the opportunity is the key word. We want to give them plenty of opportunities to learn new behaviors in the class. And we want to have plenty of opportunities where I can connect with them outside of class and learn new behaviors as well. But you're right. That 1 hour or less that we see them in Bible class is not going to change the world for that kid.
But it can be a light.
It can start them on the right path. Proverbs 22:16. Okay. Well, that's kind of the environment. When we come back after lunch, then we're actually going to kind of launch into some specific techniques and tools to use in class that might prove helpful. Again, things to experiment with. And we'll try to have a little bit more time in some of those to have some more question and answer and talk through some of those things. Watch the board for your assignment when you come in next time, the pre-class activity. And we'll kind of go from there.